Today's seminar, the title is on the Moldable Body of the Ousia. It's part of a series that I will do probably for a year. The Ousia, the Dark Matter of Lunguage, but language with you, which refers to breathing in the lungs. Of course, the breath, the object breath that I have been talking about has nothing to do with. It's a different sort of a breath, let's say. It's the breath of life, if you prefer thinking like that. And I will follow the same structure of the previous seminar, which will be, I would say a few things that I thought, kind of aphorisms. Some of them are a bit longer. But before I reach that point of setting this sentence, putting this sentence together, in my head, a lot of thinking has been going on, sometimes for months. I want to do this sort of seminar so to inspire your own thinking and also to inspire work. So I will be on these lines. Of course, we can have a conversation if that arises. Okay. I will say for somebody who just entered that this presentation follows the previous seminars we did. It will go on for probably a year, this series. It refers to language, but with you, which has a connotation of the object breath, which I consider the object of desire, not an object causing desire, but the object of desire. And today I want to say a few quotes that I have been thinking for some time. I mean, to construct them, to spark your own thinking, and maybe you can use them in your own practices as coaches, as psychologists, as psychoanalysts, as in your life as well. So the first quote that I will, somebody else is coming in, but I'm not gonna, I got bored to repeat the same things. The first quote that I will say, it's the nobody does not have a name. Yeah, mute please. Who is it? Okay, I put everybody on mute, but you can mute yourselves when you want to ask something or have a conversation, because there is a lot of background sounds. So the nobody does not have a name. Okay. For those of you who are practicing analysis, you know that many people they spend all their lives to construct a name. You also know about the names of the Father, that they gives us some sort of a context, but at the same time they restrict us from other things, from experiencing some different sort of freedom. So the nobody does not have a name. The second quote that I want to tell you, of course, about the object breath, and the publication will be available in about a month if you want to read more about it. The breath is a straight line. I mentioned previous seminar that Lacan says that there are no straight lines, but in a few moments in the same seminar, he seems to contradict himself. So a straight line is forbidden by the signifier. Okay? The signifier forbids a straight line. To what? Towards the object and towards the object of your desire. If you think of the drive, how it functions, it has this cyclical movement. Okay? So the movement of the circle is the movement of the drive. There cannot be, even though many people think of the drive as the arrow, maybe because of Lacan's aphorism in the Ecrits that he uses the ancient Greek of Heraclitus, the word vios and vios, vios which means bow, but also life. And she says, the name is Vios, but for the bow, but its job is to kill. And the way, if we remember the four aspects of the drive, the source, the pressure, that Freud mentions and Lacan elaborates in his seminars, the aim and the object, usually we think of it as a straight line. It is, there is linearity because it's based on the signifier, but the linearity doesn't mean that it's a straight line. Straight line is when you achieve the actual free association, not the one that the therapist or the psychoanalyst or the psychotherapist tell you to just speak or whatever, speak whatever troubles you, or speak whatever comes to your head. But free association, as I said other times, is to be able to speak freely without distractions for what do you want. And this freedom comes also with not just by articulating what you want, but it is accompanied by an act. Okay, I will mention again this term from the Bible, the γεννηθήτω, the fiat lux. There was no separation between articulation of speech and the act. So the straight line, the breath is a straight line. Okay, the object breath, the object of desire is a straight line. There is nothing, if you reach your own object, what makes you breathe in life, there is nothing that can disturb that. It's a straight line. Okay, it comes and goes, but it's a straight line. If you ask me, it's a proverb for da, as Freud says, but without an object. The third one, it's the breath. Let me see what it's here. Okay. The breath cannot be guided by a voice. The object breath, a couple of people that I know, they wrote, I think it's in England and somebody else in a different country, which I forgot. They wrote about the breath, but they connected it with the voice. Even if you are, involved in meditation, you know about the guided meditation. There is a voice there giving a rhythm to your breath. The actual object voice, in the way I mention it, the actual object breath, not the voice, it cannot be guided by a voice. Okay, it's very related to the external, to the apiron, to the infinite. And if you relate it with the voice, then it loses its creative infinity. There cannot be an analysis without an anodos. Otherwise, it is a living tomb. What is the anodos? I got that word from the ancient Greek mysteries, but because there were a couple of stages. It was the kathodos, the entering into the mysteries. That's why a lot of ancient Greek cults, for example, they have underground places and bit secretive. So that was a kathodos, and then was the anodos. The anodos was a return. Okay, it was a return, but the person was returning as a new person. I would say, for the purpose of the seminar, with a new body. Okay, so if there is no anodos and there is only the sinking into the mysteries, then you are alive in the tomb. A lot of therapists, a lot of analysts, they give emphasis on, even that is CBT, there is an emphasis on the construction is around the traumatic. Okay, so especially with a lot of psychotherapists and psychoanalysts, they give the emphasis in understanding, in knowing. And knowing, of course, it cannot cure you by itself, unless there are these anodos that, what are you going to do with this knowledge? A lot of people will ask you, and it's a big argument from colleagues, either those are psychologists or psychotherapists or psychoanalysts. Okay, what you're going to do with this knowledge? It's not about what I will do. It's you have to figure it out. But a new knowledge, it provides you with a map, and now you can actually direct yourself and your body different in life. Those who cannot do anything with that, and they separate the knowledge from its action or act, there are people who there is this unconscious enjoyment of their trauma, but also they are expecting somebody else, they are expecting a master to do or remove their pain, to do anything for them but remove their pain. So there cannot be an analysis without this anodos. I use a Greek word because this is a term it is used, for example, in the Mithras mysteries or the Eleusinian mysteries. Of course, I'm not going to say more because I want you to start reading about these things. Otherwise, it is living in a tomb. I spoke about the metaphorical resurrection of the act, which is outside the tombstone, and having knowledge of your trauma, but staying in this melancholic position. It's as if you are alive, but within the tomb. Okay. Plasma. I like this word plasma. Those who follow my seminars or have read a couple of books that I wrote, I refer to the plasma as related to thunder. Thunder is a plasma, and I like it because it functions, first of all, perpendicular. Lacan spoke about the perpendicular cut in the Time to Conclude seminar, and he also mentioned the number, I think it was the Discourse of Rome, and maybe he mentions it again in the seminar, the discourse that might not have a semblance, and that's the act. The act is that which cannot be said. Okay? It's not just the traumatic which cannot be said, but we do something that the trauma, that which cannot be put into articulation, you can speak it with the body, which is fairly the opposite of psychosomatics or internalizing on your body the signifiers that cause you suffering. So the plasma, from ancient Greek plasma, it means mortable substance. And you can understand from where I got the title of the seminar. It's one of the 4 fundamental states of matter. It's ili. Okay? Those of you who know about how I speak about the act, I speak the act as the moment where the known body, okay, this mortable substance of the desired being receives a body, and then it functions perpendicular in the world. Okay, it's as if you have access to 2 different dimensions or 2 different worlds. You can put your own words here if you don't want to sound like me. So it's a matter, but it's a matter that comes and disappears. Okay, so this can tell us also that it cannot be captured by the gaze, because the gaze creates something static, creates an image. And it's many times in your sessions, regardless of what you are practicing, that people will start and they will feel like failure. They will feel like failure to what? To an ideal. What is an ideal? I asked Jacques-Alain, our previous president, and a very important analyst, in my opinion, and he simplified the trauma. He told me that traumatic is basically an ideal, and he was right. It's always this comparison to reach this ideal, this trip, if you want, to go towards normality. And once I was speaking with Penny, which is with us today, he told me this is where people get crazy in their attempt to become normal. It's, if I mix these sentences that I heard from these 2 people, you get crazy, you lose it in your attempt to reach the ideal, an unconscious ideal. Okay? I will speak a little bit about the graph of desire. Angelos, another important psychoanalyst of our school, and the new president, for those of you who don't know it, of the SFL London. Angelos asked me to do a seminar on the graph of desire, which I will do soon, but today I will just say about the first stage. If you know about the graph of desire, one of the first stations that it has, it's, I cannot see it very well, but I think it's O in parentheses, it's the moment in the sessions, again, regardless of what you do, even though if you are doing life coaching, which is you cannot associate it as much as you cannot associate Lacanian psychoanalysis with therapy. It's the analysants or the clients or the patients attempt, with whatever means that they have at their disposal, consciously to situate you in their fantasy and foreclose their part of working. This is a call for the specialist. They are calling consciously you to take the position of the specialist. Regardless if you know diagnosis, if you know how to do psychometrics, whatever, or clinical diagnosis or structural diagnosis like the Lacanians do, this is a call for you to take a position of knowledge. Assuming that position of knowledge, the only position that they take is not one that they will explore and create a unique solution for their life, but that of the ill person, okay, that will follow certain steps to get cured. If they insist on that, you know that those of you who are psychoanalysts, it's because they do not want to search what is causing those things. For example, a panic attack. Of course, there are techniques and medication or whatever there is there to cure a panic attack, but a panic attack that is provoked in a specific context, it's as if you are removing your tooth, take a painkiller, but you actually need to remove the nerves from your tooth. Okay, so always, as we said almost every seminar, take in consideration the context in which a symptom arises. Okay, the symptom has you cannot refer it to a plasma because it's always related to an image. It is always connected with the mirror. How much we fail that mirror, and you can never reach it, of course. So the first graph of desire is where the analysant pushes to reform, to restake their conscious fantasy, their identifications, and they demand from you consciously to take a specific position. If you refuse that, then the only option for them is to work in analysis, without them asking too much, what should I do here? This you'll encounter in the first sessions, and it is the first test for the analyst, the psychoanalyst, to refuse that position. You can refuse that position either by being dedicated to the desire of psychoanalysis, which is basically your own desire, and not to get involved in different desires, okay? And not be sadistic. Recently, Angelos was in a meeting with other psychoanalysts from abroad, and I think a couple of them were psychologists as well as psychoanalysts, and they believe that psychoanalysis, if not practiced wisely, can cause a problem. And Angelos' opinion is what we share in the school, that you cannot cause problems with psychoanalysis because from our experience, if they don't like your position, they just leave. You can cause problems only when you're sadistic. When you have a therapist that is sadist, and he didn't elaborate his jouissance, his conscious enjoyment, then yes, he might cause some problems, but it's not going to be like destructive problems for the life of the analyzer. And let's go back to a point. If he's sadistic, okay, he's in no connection with his desire. If you are sadistic, then there is a jouissance operating, and this person should not be an analyst, because it's not only that he's asking for somebody else to carry its signifiers, he gets enjoyment consciously or unconsciously from other people's suffering. And this is also a common problem we encounter with various orientations, be that psychology, psychiatry, I just said psychoanalysis, of course there is no guarantee, that they expect I don't like the word specialists, maybe therapists or the psychologists or the psychotherapists, maybe I should mention all of them, not to think, not to listen, not to listen what the patient or the analyst will say, but they invoke you to be stupid. They want you to be stupid. In what way? So instead of having this direction and listening the context of the specific person, you have to create a triangle. What is a triangle? Let's say I'm one of these specialists that I mentioned, even psychoanalyst sometimes. The speech comes to me, and from that speech, I filter not the specific pillars and points of reference of that person in relation to their life, but I take what I have to take, and I filter it not even from my own mind, because my own mind uses this third corner here, okay, which is a triangle. It can be the psychoanalytic structural diagnosis, it can be the DSM, it can be Freud, it can be any book, it can be a Quran, okay? So what I become at the end is I become a priest. I can be a priest of science, a priest of religion, a priest of Freud, a priest of everything, okay? So that's why I say many times that the psychoanalyst it's for every analyst, for every session, he has to, in a sense, die and be resurrected, because you have to shape, you have to be multiple, your body has to be multiple for every single session and for every single analysis, okay? How can you be multiple, okay? If you separate yourself, not with the symptom, of course you can practice nicely with the symptom, but if you identify with your own act, okay? These are things that we said in the previous seminars. Then you cannot be a priest. You cannot be a priest, a metaphorical priest of your own conscious knowledge. Even if you have a structural diagnosis, you operate on knowledge, okay? You are not operating on the infinite. Of what Lacan said about the psychosis, and Penny informed me many years ago, was to create a unique solutions. For me, this is psychoanalysis, to offer anybody the opportunity to create a unique solution for their life. And the first stage, it's not to see them, or not to enter their fantasy and not use them for our fantasy. And the second, it's to, I forgot it, there's too many things in my head now, is to be able to learn a new language every single time. Okay, it's a huge challenge for everybody not to go with a diagnosis. What are your tools there? Okay, Lacan gave us the first tool is language. And what is your second and most important tool? Your own desire. Your own desire not to receive, of course, body by this encounter with the analyzer. Okay, let's proceed. Take a moment, and when you have time, to look at Lacan's graph of desire. Angelos informed me that it used to be the graph by Lacan, but Miller gave it the name of the graph of desire. I prefer the Lacan's name, the graph, because for me it does not represent desire. It's a very valuable to understand it, but it doesn't represent. For me, it's not the graph of desire. The next thing I want to tell you is that the dotiki, it's an English word. The dotiki is something that we get from Greek language. We don't have it now, but we have it in ancient Greek. I think they use it they have it in Serbia and maybe Russian. Have a look at it. Offers the end of metonymization. In a sense, what dotiki offers is, I am who I am. Of course, the psychoanalysts here, they know about the metonymization of the subject. Those of you who are psychologists here, I can see a few of them. It's when you have these cases that you give them all this logic, you do these techniques, you do whatever you think is going to work, and then they come the next session, and it's the same thing repeats. You cannot do anything about it. That's not obsession. That's what the psychiatry used to call the untriggered psychosis, even though they have no other symptoms of that, they will remind you psychosis. There is this metonymization, and they cannot stop. They have this relation with the unstoppable. Whatever solution you offer, the binary, an obsessive binary will appear, and this constant movement of complaint will be there. And this is what drains a lot of therapists as well, because they don't know what to do. And some of them of course, with the ethic that their job provides them. We're not saying that is good. It's one of the positions that a person can search and support or assist themselves. Usually when they cannot stop this metonymization, or when the body suffers, it is then that they get intimidated and they send people to a psychiatrist. I'm not saying that it's bad to go to psychiatrists. Of course, we cooperate with psychiatrists, but I just want you to pay attention to this when you encounter this unstoppable metonymization. Basically, when logic or the techniques you were taught are not working, you experience an anxiety, or you say, I cannot assist this person. Okay, let's see what we can do about it later on. So check again how this dotiki, I don't know how it's in English, if someone knows, they can say. It's the end of metonymization, and it goes to this, I am who I am. It stops basically the conscious rhythm of the subjects or persons are conscious to try to identify with the name of the Father, with a point of reference basically, but to fail, constantly failing. Okay, you can see that in a lot of anorexias and bulimias, or with these cases that they are very much passionate or very much dedicated to a boyfriend that they lost and they cannot get separated from that. Okay, you might have the metonymization of the same person, but as they are metonymized, they have this rhythm, and they identify with the anal object of Freud, because they will put everything negative on them. And the tempting diagnosis there is depression. It's very usual, actually, very common. Depression and obsessional and psychoangasmos and obsessional thoughts. Okay. If there is desire, there is no psychopathology. If you practice based on desire, then you are removed from the traumatic. You pass from the traumatic, but in your way to this unique construction. You don't need to have a proper diagnosis. I disagree even with our friend, the psychoanalyst who visited Cyprus a few years ago. He says, it doesn't matter if you make the wrong diagnosis, make one and then you can change it. Well, if you can practice with the diagnosis. I'm talking here about the structural diagnosis or any sort of diagnosis. Okay, that's fine. It's one of the honorable ways to do so. But you will miss desire, because your own desire, first of all, will be trapped into listening and seeing through these glances of psychopathology. Okay? Diagnosis dies when the analyst has gained access to the infinite of the act. Okay? The infinite of the act has no calculation. It's infinite, it's beyond the fantasies, beyond psychopathology. It's something that the analyzer will construct. It can be something very simple, but they will construct their own cosmogony. Okay? And at the same time, you cannot have a cosmogony without reconstructing your body. Again, I would say one of my favorite examples. In anorexia, if you are practicing with psychopathology, you might be captured and trapped by the obesity you see in the mirror. Okay? The obesity you see in the mirror can offer anxiety to the whatever, psychoanalyst, therapist. But if you practice in the way I teach you, you will understand that the main issue there is not the person who has 35 kilos. Okay, if there is a need to put them to the hospital, you do so. But the obesity they experience in the mirror. This is the actual problem we have to deal with. Okay? And if there is no desire and you are captured by psychopathology, you cannot see neither the possibilities for the construction of desire, and not even the lanthanusa, the latus, which is the lanthanusa desire. There can be a desire to die, or desire, a fourth desire, the lanthanusa, the lathus. It's a desire captured in a fantasy. With desire proper, you construct both your desire and the cosmogony. you construct the place of the no-body. What is the no-body? Your removal from your own unconscious fantasy in which you operate. Of course, for those who are here for first time, there is only one fundamental fantasy for everybody, okay? And the subject in the process of analysis, they have specific choices, either to stick with a symptom, either to create the symptom, which is a reorganization of the otrasina, the other scene, the scene in which we operate, but better reorganized. And the other solution is the identification with the act, which means, in a sense, to abandon your body. Okay? To abandon your body, to abandon your fantasy. Not to change it, to fix it, but to abandon, to create a new one. And if you create a new fantasy, it's not going to be fantasy because it's not centralized around an object, but it is centralized around your act. And when it is centralized your act, then your word becomes literal. You are very much close to being, as a joke now, small gods. When God says, let it be light, it became light. Okay, this is a straight line. You have access to writing and not only to reading. Diagnosis dies when the analyst has gained access to the infinite of the act. I just said that. The moment of crystallization, the event, is the moment there is a metaphor to express the real. Many times in your sessions, and this is an argument that a lot of people don't understand, your analysts, your clients might say or might remember a few incidents from the past where you can extract a lot of information, but this is not the trauma. This is not what caused the trauma. We know that what is marking our bodies and our existence, this is also for you guys who are psychologists, is not these memories that they mention or they don't remember, but something that was repeatedly unconsciously marking their bodies. So in that maybe scene, I don't know, maybe they mentioned that their mothers beat them or whatever. It's not what caused all this suffering in the now, but what crystallized the jouissance. Okay, it's that what they remember is the moment of crystallization. What I want you to search in these scenes of crystallization is what has been repeated in their life. The Freudian drive is, they speak about the Freuds and the drive, is not just a mythical circuit, is what has been repeated, and what has been repeated constantly hitting and marking the body of the child, okay? So try to see what has been repeated and how in this maybe even seemingly unconnected stories that the analysts or your clients tell you, try to see the common points of reference, okay? Not from your perspective of logic, but try to pay attention in which position they have been placed and marked. So the moment of crystallization, and the moment, these scenes that they mention, it's the moment of crystallization, okay? I want you to think your own cases now. Okay, that's an event. It's not a bodily event, it's an event. And I said also, the second part of that quote, it's the moment of crystallization where there is a metaphor to express the real with capital R. I'm referring to the Lacanian real. Okay, when there is no metaphor, the traumatic cannot be expressed at all. So it seeks. There are two ways: to be projected very powerfully on the other, or the worst case scenario to appear on the body. So if you have a metaphor there, it's one of the good case scenarios, regardless of the trauma, that the subject has a metaphor. If there is no metaphor at all, then of course we are leaning towards schizophrenia. Okay? I remind you of Schroeder, Freud's case, when he started constructing a metaphor. What is a metaphor? It's a cosmos, it's a word. Okay? if you are creating a logic where you will put your being, your body, and with which metaphor you will express and understand the world and your own place in the world. If there is no metaphor, then probably we are leaning towards schizophrenia without necessarily having the classical symptoms of schizophrenia. Okay? And without and the metaphor, of course, we repeat ourselves in that metaphor because this is the only way, good or bad, I would say, if you don't have analysis, but that you can, without guaranteeing anything with analysis, of course, without, so to approach the world. Okay, so if there is no real, if there is no metaphor, then the real, the trauma, the event, cannot be expressed through a symbolic form. It cannot be expressed hidden in language. Okay, we mark their conscious in language, in what they say. Lacan says it is structured like a language, but not a language because you cannot speak a conscious. Okay, and I will say again, their conscious is not in the brain. It's between me and Spiros. It's between me and Marinos. Okay, it is here in the way I connect to the world. Although a lot of neuropsychoanalysts, they try to situate their conscious in the body, and especially this Eric Cartel guy who got the Nobel Prize, and his big love was Freud, and he thinks that he will give a substantial position to Freud if he proves the bodily functions of their conscious. So the latest conclusion they have is that their conscious is in the hypothalamus, a part of the brain, which is to laugh with. The oxymoron of creation. I put 2 dots into this quote. The oxymoron of creation. The oxymoron of creation is the construction of a known body. This is the oxymoron, that you have to construct a known body. And this is the greatest construction in analysis. Freud didn't mention that, but I will add it. To construct a known body, to be a multiple substance. If you are a multiple substance, you can situate yourself in the sessions as that breath of air which sparks desire. If not, then you are going to practice with the diagnosis and hide the object A or appear it accordingly to create a desire. But what this desire is not desire, is a latus, is a latanusa, because you are sparking a desire even for your analysis to speak based on that fantasy and based on your knowledge. Okay? The desire of the analyst is nothing more than his own desire to his own act. And that's a desire, it's an act with which you identify not only at the moment you are practicing, but this is what guides you in life. Okay? If you have a position as an analyst or as a psychotherapist or as a psychologist, then you are wearing a mask there, and consciously or unconsciously, willingly or unwillingly, you are practicing without actually thinking. You are practicing through a knowledge that you have received. The triangle that I did earlier, and I did to a few other seminars. So the oxymoron of creation is a construction of the known body, not the destruction, the construction of the known body. How can you construct a known body? No nobody, no body. The fantasy, by the way, and the lack of straight lines, they give you a body. So how do you construct straight lines? It is with one specific moment in the moment, the scene in the scene, that we identify with a master signifier. Okay? I will repeat that. I will not say anything about it. I will leave it a bit abstract. I want you to think about it. Okay? Think of a memory that you had. Think of a scene from the past that sometimes it comes in your head and is repeated. And maybe there is no reason why it comes there. Or you cannot find a reason, or you find it, or you found a logic, but it still comes. It still needs to be interpreted. That's why it returns. So I will repeat it. It is with one specific moment in the moment. Okay? Moment in the moment. I can give you an example if you want. It is with one specific moment in the moment, the scene in the scene, that we identify with an S1, with a master signifier. Okay? Think of a girl. Think of her mother there talking. They are in the seaside. The mother talks. The girl can step, is pretty tall for her age. She's young. She's, I don't know, you can say 9 years old or whatever number you want to put there. The mother is speaking with another friend, but the mother has the back turned to the smaller kid, which is much younger, and it's swimming with a, I don't know how they call it in English, this wheel that you put, Penny, how you call that, this wheel that you put around the kids?
I don't remember. I mean, I know armbands.
Okay, armband, like armband, yeah. So Silvio. So at that moment, the older kid experienced the mother talking to a friend with her back turned like this. Okay? She experienced at the same time, you look at view. I see that, and at the same time, I see my sister falling in the water from this puffy thing. And of course, it stays there and it's going to drown. And then the older daughter says, Mommy, Mommy. Okay? And she goes and says it. You could give a lot of interpretations here, like, oh, you saved your sister because you shouted. Whatever. You can give many interpretations because it's one of these memories that they come and they, they have no meaning. Yes, the sister was saved by the older sister, but this is not what is important here. The scene in the scene. Okay? The scene in the scene. The moment in the moment is represented by the signifier drowning. And this is the signifier with which the older daughter identifies. That is why she was able to recognize it. Okay? This is where the work will be done. Maybe you can give an interpretation at the beginning, but you will see very similar moments where the subject cannot breathe appearing. So the scene in the scene is to find not the interpretation, but with which signifier the subject identifies there, with which point of reference. Okay? So that's a good example in my head, at least, that I can give you. Think of your own moment, of your own scene from the past, and try to see what you can get out of it. Eric Laurent, one of my favorite analysts, and in my opinion, I'll call him one of the most ethical and honorable students of Lacan. He spoke about the rhetorics of the conscious. Lacan mentions that in the same seminar that I mentioned earlier, a moment to conclude. Lacan is a bit contradictory there because he says that psychoanalysis is a rhetor. I think he was meaning the position we take against the gaps of language, but if you are a rhetor, or if you believe in the rhetorics of the conscious, then you have a body because you believe in knowledge. So if you push or support the transgression of the fantasy, it is a transgression about the all-knowing. There is no act. Okay, in the act, you cannot acknowledge the rhetorics of the conscious. Okay, because what is a rhetor? Is someone who knows the tricks of language, but has no idea about to be a proper poet. The word poetry in Greek, or poetis, is someone who creates, but also writes beautiful verses. So it comes back to what I said earlier, the Let It Be Light, but it was a poetic verse, but at the same time, it was a moment of creation. So if you are a reader, of their conscious and you know how to detect the master signifiers, you can understand the structural diagnosis and all this stuff, okay? And you stay there without having access to your own act, then you are actually a reader. You cannot be a proper psychoanalyst, in my opinion. How do you become a proper psychoanalyst? By being faithful to your own act of life. With your act, you live your life. It's not something that you utilize in the sessions. So a psychoanalyst or a therapist who they don't identify with their own act in life, they cannot operate unless the patient, the analyst and the whoever how they call them, is identified with a medical discourse, if they are ill. Okay? If you think about it, in order for me to operate with the knowledge that I was taught, with the science that I received in universities or in the training schools, I demand somebody to identify with being ill. Okay? Even suffering. Because if they are not in a specific position, I cannot identify with the knowledge that I have to cure them. So sometimes I think, who is supporting whose identity in the sessions? I'm talking about everybody here, including psychoanalysts. Okay, so to be able to have a body and not to be a reader, you must live your own act. To live it, not to live, to abandon it, to live it, to give it life, to give it a body. The myth of the act is not a fantasy because it needs to be enacted. And it cannot be enacted unless it is provided a body to dedicate yourself in your desire. If analysis is part of a medical discourse of cure, then in quotes now, I want to be a psychoanalyst, I want to be a therapist, I want to be a psychologist, risks to be part of an identification. I told to many of you the example of a friend of mine that has been in analysis for many, many years, but his fantasy was to be superior, a conscious fantasy. Consciously, he wanted to serve, but he could be stabilized only when there were weak people around him. He considered people who would go to him in psychotherapy to be weak. He wanted weak friends. He wanted a stupid woman. So that was his conscious mode of enjoyment. Okay? This person can help you as long as you are ill. Okay? They will help you as long as you are accepting to be ill. Because if you live from there, their own position will be destabilized. And this is why I'm urging psychiatrists and psychologists to go and have any sort of psychotherapy or psychoanalysis, just something. Because even if we belong to a different orientation, you will have something to keep you grounded, something to which you will testify. Okay? Very few want to transmit, especially in the UK, very few they want to transmit psychoanalysis. They want to cure, and they do cure. They might have some analysis. But if you have in London, let's say 10 million people almost, and the amount of psychoanalysis you have, it's very little compared to that. Okay? In a country that people, they show interest in Lacanian analysis or to beyond or to any sort of psychotherapy, the amount of people you have for psychoanalysis is very little. What is the purpose of wanting to become a psychoanalyst? What is it? It can have only two purposes in general. One is to be able to receive this signifier, oh, psychoanalyst, so to get a title, and the other one to transmit whatever you got and transmit what assists you, what helped you, what helped you to find your own breath and orientation in life, to transmit it to other people or to facilitate possibilities for them to find it. If you are just cured, you don't want to be an analyst unless you want to practice as a master. Okay, so I said in the past, I think a couple of years ago, that we have far too many cure subjects, but not many that we have transmitted desire. We didn't transmit, I'm putting myself there, and we didn't transmit desire because they don't want to be analysts to transmit. If they experience this transmission of desire, at least a bigger number of them will seek to transmit that desire as well by becoming psychoanalysts. Not because they want the title, but because they want to transmit this libido, this living energy that creates these unique solutions for life. This is libido, in my own, the greatest extent, in my opinion, of libido. It's this urge to live. Okay, this is the sex, this is the eros that Freud mentioned. Okay, to be able to live this breath of life. So more people that cure and very few analysts, because probably few have experienced the might of desire in the face of their psychoanalyst. Okay, I will write it here. The true word, η αληθινή λέξης. Lacan spoke about that. What is, he says that the goal of analysis, it's the appearance of the true word. I will interpret it in my own way. Okay, what is a true word? For me, the true word is the appearance of an act. An act that speaks. What is an act that speaks? Not the speaking being, το ομιλών in Greek, ομιλών, on and homilia, not the speaking being, but the being of the act that speaks through its own acts. Okay? Of course, you've got access to language, but when you speak with your own acts, you've got also access to language with you, with the breath. So, one true word is that which it is literal. And if it is literal, then we go back to the let it be light. Okay, I will do it. Your word, it's no different from your act. They are one. If they are not one, then again, I'm telling you that you go to the level of the doing. Okay, which is on the side of the drive, of the repetition. So one true word is that which is literal. Those of you who know me from my previous seminars, you know that I added the literal in addition to metonymy and metaphors that Lacan says. So the true word is that which is literal. It is that which creates. The literal word creates. That's why it includes the act. Neither dogmatic nor heretic. If you don't want to be dogmatic or heretic, then there is the dimension of the unique solution, to be a creator. Neither dogmatic nor heretic, but a creator. The creator is not on the side of dogma and not on the side of heresy. This is the Ousia. The Ousia, of course, the word they have it in English, from Aristotle. This is the Ousia of the unique solution. Okay, to be a creator. You cannot have a unique solution in life unless you create it. Everything else is a borrowing. And life itself, I think Penny told me a few years ago, you cannot borrow anybody's solution in life. Okay, neither dogmatic. Lacan spoke about the empty signifier. Empty signifier, you can interpret it, but by an empty signifier that is not accompanied by any more material. But for me, empty signifiers are those that they don't include the act. Okay, so basically all signifiers that do not include the act, they are empty. They just give you a body. But the act can only be on the side of desire, not on the side of the mistaken desire, the lathanusa, the latus. I prefer the Greek word, lathanusa. It is through the pneumata, the spirits, I will say what I mean by that, breathing, okay, that one reaches the movement in the monad. The movement in the monad, in the Pythagorean monad, is not necessarily from point A to B, or from, if you take the Freudian drive, from the source towards the object, and then the elliptical movement around the object, because they say the object cannot be reached. But it's a vibrating movement. You can reach what you want through vibrating and causing transmission to other people around you. And this is relates to the transmission of psychoanalysis in the way we teach it. Okay? Not psychoanalysis as a practice where you have to speak about the past, because those of you who have experience of psychoanalysis, or maybe if you didn't have, think of the post-traumatic stress disorder. There is no time in the trauma. So what they say, psychoanalysis about the past or about deep stuff, it's stupid. Even psychoanalysts say that. There is no depth. There is no depth. There is no height. It's just a constant movement. Okay? The traumatic is timeless. So we cannot speak about before in psychoanalysis. The urge is not, in our orientation at least, is not to speak about the past. It's just to speak freely, because the structures of their conscious, they will manifest themselves even if you speak about what you ate today. Okay? It doesn't matter what you say. It's up to the analyst where they will direct their speech. But the traumatic and the structure, okay? The structure of the trauma, I'm not talking about the clinical structure of diagnosis, it will be there in front of you. So please check Ousia and perispomeni. I don't know the terminology in English, but they were punctuation marks, okay? They were punctuation marks that related to spirits. It's when they mark the letter in the sentence, what they cause you to change your way you breathe. Okay? It was to assist your breathing. So that's very important because it relates both to language and both to language with you. I will not say more about this. I will have a different seminar. Okay? So it is through these spirits, Ousia and perispomeni, this sort of punctuation marks, that one reaches the movement in the monad. The monad is what we said the previous time, the Pythagorean monad, and that movement is vibrating. It's wavy. If the analyst sees psychoanalysis, as rhetorics, it is because he has never given a body to his desire, to his act. They are conscious, it is indeed structured like a language, but desire is structured like an act. We spoke a few times with Penny and Angelos about the impossibility of the square root of -1. Lacan spoke about it. Let's move a bit away from the number and use the square root, and to say that the square root of desire is the act. There is no impossibility here. There is this mathematical function that gives you a very precise straight line. The square root, not of -1, but the square root of desire is your act. So structure, their conscious is structured like a language, but desire is structured like an act. Logopraxia. It includes two words I have been speaking today. The word praxis, which we can read with the act, and logos. Okay, the dimension of speech, but also the logos of Heraclitus. The logos of Heraclitus, everything moves, nothing remains the same besides logos. Nobody can step in the same river twice. Even if you step in the same place, the water will not be the same. But there were those who don't know, Heraclitus, when he was about to die, when he felt that his last breath is coming, he went and he placed himself on a small It was like a chunk, let's say a small hill, like this. It wasn't a hill anyway, of manure, of shit, because he wanted to show that the human body worth nothing. Well, it worth nothing, especially when you realize not your moment of death, but the death, the possibility of death in life. I will say something about it in a bit. So desire is structured like an act. Logopraxia, I told you about logopraxia. I also want to mention you that the logos, in the beginning there was a word, an archinian logos that Apostle Ioannis mentions in the fourth gospel. He wrote it in Ephesus, the same place that Heraclitus wrote, and he was very influenced by Heraclitus. And if you read the Encore, I think, Harula, this is the way to pronounce it in French, Encore, the seminar of Lacan.
Encore.
Encore, yes.
Yes, encore.
It has, if you pay attention to the rhythm and how the words flow, especially the Greek translation of the Encore, it will totally remind you the rhythm of the Gospel of John, which is very different. It's a Greek Gospel. It will show you this rhythm. It's very spiritual rhythm. It's a rhythm that it can move your body. So read those two just to experience this poetic movement in the sense of creating. Sergius used to create something. Okay? Okay, let's go to another one. The fact that I have elaborated and added the act to a dimension of desire makes the distinction between jouissance and desire clearer. Desire cannot be associated with the kagon. The kagon is a word that we have a conversation with Angelos and Penny a few months ago, but we had this conversation again years ago. It is from ancient Greek, the word kagon. So desire cannot be associated with the kagon because the subject, now verb, you know about that I spoke about the verbification of the subject of their conscious, and I speak about the verb and not the subject, which is the ergon, the being of the act. Okay? Because the subject, now verb, again, desire cannot be associated with the kagon, with evil, because the subject, now verb, does not seek to reproduce its body with the other and the other's embodiments. You don't seek to recreate your body by putting signifiers in the other person. And I'm not talking about understanding them and withdrawing them or whatever. You don't need to put signifiers around you to create your body. Okay? This is a precondition for the no body. This is also the moment where you can experience love without the other carrying a signifier that will provoke your sexuality. Then drive is not important there because you don't need it to create a body. It is there in a different way that we'll say in different seminars, in other seminar, but you don't need the other person to be part of your fantasy or you to be part of your own fantasy to experience your sexual satisfaction or dissatisfaction. Okay? The other, I'm talking about the Lacanian other, language, does not carry your binary. So you are outside the structure of the jouissance of the other. So what is fragmented there is paranoia. Okay? You go beyond meaning. This is paranoia. You go beyond meaning. So, and this is where you can understand if some of your clients or analysts, they are close to what can be referred as paranoia or towards awakening. If they are close to awakening, they will speak you how they experience their bodies dissolving, but how they are feeling that they are creating something new, that this is an opportunity for them. Okay? If you experience this sort of awakening, then it's something that goes beyond the structure. It goes beyond paranoia. And this person will come to analysis of 2 sessions, so it can be to receive your support to create this new world, cosmos, for them. I will quote something from Lacan. Okay? Okay. From the seminar, A Moment to Conclude. This indeed is what I should manage to do. I started formally that I do not seek, I find. This is very important quote. I do not seek, I find. These were my words borrowed from someone who had, in his own way, a certain notoriety, namely the painter Picasso. That's brilliant what Picasso said, I will explain. Currently, I do not find, I search. I search, and some people even want to accompany me in this research. In other words, I emptied. As one might say, these rings of string with which I formerly made Borromean chains. Okay, I will refer to the word that I borrow from Greek Orthodox theology, the word kenosis, the emptiness of Jesus in the 40 days in the desert. That was his formation, the emptiness of his divine self. Okay, he emptied his body. So to have a new body, different sort of a body. I'm using this as a metaphor. Okay, so this is an empty, I emptied, as one might say, says Lacan, these rings of string with which I formerly made Borromean chains. So I respond to that. Also, before I go there, oh yeah, I'll explain. I respond to that. This I seek, that Lacan borrowed from Picasso, is a removal from the destitute of the gaze, the object gaze. Okay? I don't seek, I search. I don't try to see, I search. Doesn't matter if you see or not. It's your breath that goes through this. That's important in this searching. Okay, this I seek is a removal from the destitute of the gaze and searching the domains of a breathing being. Let's go to another quote. New notes. What happens after the leaving of the Borromean? I give you as a question that one, and I will do a seminar. What happens when you escape this Borromean? I said a few things in previous seminars. Breath is the first and the last thing to function. The breath that you enter life, but that not the object of desire breath. You don't return to your object of desire, you construct it, as much as you construct your desire in your act. Every structure is a fantasy. This is what is said in the mainstream, in most Lacanian circles. I believe it is wrong. Okay? We are structuring the structure with the act. We are structuring the structure with the act. Okay? Every structure is a fantasy. I'm giving you now a structure which is based on the act, not the fantasy. Geometry includes topology. Okay? But you cannot have access to your act unless you have access to geometry, straight lines of geometry. The real is everywhere. Okay? The real is everywhere, but there is, by many psychoanalysts or therapists, there is focus in the absence or lack instead of parousia, instead of the presence of the act and the solution. And I'm not referring to positive psychology here. Okay? What is the difference, this is a question for you, between original creation and original experience? And what are their common points of reference leading to the identification with the act? Signifier is the vibration of the body when it is shaped in the jouissance of the other. We are being vibrated when the signifier appears in front of us. Okay? We are captured by that. We are vibrated, but not in the eternal, not in our act, within a specific topology. We are touched by the signifier. We are captured within that specific body, that specific fantasy. If we are operating on the lanthanusa, on the latus, on the mistaken desire, I just said the same thing 3 times, then the desire needs to attack proper desire in order to sustain itself. And this is where the nightmare appears. Because unconsciously we are fighting our desire. When our desire is a threat to our being, when we are dedicated to our fantasy and that jouissance / body we get from it, then our desire will be a nightmare. Okay. The Borromean knot does not use geometry. It is harmony that uses geometry and the straight lines. Okay? And you can have harmony only when you find your breath, your object of desire. Nix being is a term that I brought about a year ago. It's a Vedo being. Someone not only who is not a being, but it's a being that brings Vedo to life itself. The Nix being, Nix being. It is opposing desire and going to the lanthanusa, as I said earlier, by fighting desire. It's not just opposing, but it fights desire to sustain its own desire. False desire, the lanthanusa. In terms of desire, language with you is a dialect of the breath. Okay, you can put even the proper word language with A. Language is a dialogue of the breath, and this makes language a language with you. The subject, now verb, after the verbification of the subject of their conscious, will serve a new time. This is a very important quote. I have been working on it to reach to its end, maybe 5-6 months. So the subject, now verb, will serve a new time. A space, that's a different quote. A space is verb, not a verb, is verb finding time. I will repeat that. A space is verb finding time. Let's go to the next one. In the no body, there is a cosmic renovation. Okay? This came up after a conversation with Penny. The Ousia includes the thing, which for each verb provides the allegory of the word as cosmos, not word in language. The Ousia includes the thing, which for each verb, subject that became a verb, provides the allegory of the word. I didn't say fantasy, I didn't say metaphor, I say allegory, okay? The allegory is not a metaphor providing a body. It is precisely that which shapes the things, that's the thing I'm referring here. It is that which shapes the thing's plasmatic drive through an act. Think of the thunder, okay? It's a plasmatic drive, it's a plasmatic act. Unlike the metaphor and the metonymy, with the literal, one has access to allegory. It is only with the literal that we can have access to allegory. Neither dogmatico inherited by the creator, I mentioned that earlier. The Ousia is the eternal act of generation, generation and regeneration, to which the subject provides a body. The Ousia is the eternal act of regeneration to which the subject provides a body. Okay, that's why I said that the act is perpendicular. It's not just once. You need constantly to recreate and provide your body to lose it and again. Okay, it comes perpendicular where? On the linearity of the discourse. The act is not a discourse. It is a discourse that does not have a semblance. The allegory includes the threshold to the larger context, where the dark matter of the Ousia offers possibilities for creation. Okay? I mentioned many seminars about the threshold, but the allegory has the threshold. The threshold basically is the door of the allegory. I will show you another time how it is shaped, how you construct, how a different shape is organized around the act and not around the object A. Allegory is the act and the universe. Not the universal, the universe. Okay? The space is never empty because of the signifiers of the subject. An experience of lack is because the same subject does not know the space of his desire in terms of its presence, in terms of parousia. Parousia means presence in Greek, but it also includes the word ousia inside. Diagnosis according to desire. Only when such a desire comes forth, otherwise on what sort of desire do we base this diagnosis? If it's constructed, what sort of desire do we provide a structural diagnosis? On de la truth, on a jouissance, we cannot call it desire. Okay? Where lack was, I'm offering you a different aphorism now, instead of the cogito ergo sum. Where lack was, there is a breath. Where that which cannot be said is, there is an act. This is a total different orientation of psychoanalysis. If you include that in the way you practice, in the way you think of Lacanian theory, then it changes everything. Because science loses its object, which is not truth, but an act. Think of a science that has as its object an act and not just a truth. What is sexualization if not the ability to turn a trauma into a joyful experience? Then discourse of miracles, I mentioned the discourse of miracles in the Ascesis book. The discourse of miracles is this same thing that I said mentioned about the sexualization, but with a twist. To achieve this sexualization without the body made of trauma. Let me read this again for you. What is sexualization if not the ability to turn a trauma into a joyful experience? The discourse of miracle is this same thing, but with a twist. To achieve this, try to achieve this without a body made of trauma. A body beyond the boromena, beyond the object A. Okay? A body basically based on your act. A few more quotes and we're done. 3 of them. The real phallus is the metusiosis of your act. Again, it has the word ousia, metusiosis. It's a shifting of the ousia. The release of the ousia, maybe. The real phallus is the metusiosis of your act. When your body becomes the ousia. Okay, if the real phallus is the metusiosis of your act, when your body becomes the ousia. Think of it. There are mathematics into this statement. Playing is foreclosed when the concept of death is denied. Playing, okay, the ability to play is foreclosed when the concept of death is denied from the child to start with. The ideal brings in immortality in the discourse, and thus playing is lost. When you bring in immortality, what you bring there, ideals, but by pushing away desire. You bring static images, and then the engage becomes really important. Let's go to the last one. The gagon is the true name, okay, in the jouissance of the other. I forgot the word that Angelos was, you are making a research about, not proper name. Angelos is doing a very nice research on the proper names. The kakon is the true name in the jouissance of the other. The true name, not the proper name. There is a Greek word. It's very beautiful where they use it. We use it in modern Greek, but I think in ancient Greek is much better. Favlos. We λέμε favlos kyklos. Okay? Favlos kyklos it's just favlos. Favlos means kakon. The connotation there is kakon, but in a specific way. I brought this word here because the sounding of favlos it's very close to phallos. Phallos and phallos. The kakon is related to having few. Okay? So there is the binary in this favlos of few and a lot. To this, I have it, I don't have it. I have a lot, I have a little. Okay, which is one extension of at least of the imaginary phallus. Okay, and this phallus, the phallos, it's an evil, centralized. Okay, the evil, to kakon, is the true name in the jouissance of the other. It is an evil centralized around the phallus. I want you to think that it's really important. So I will read the whole thing again. The kakon is the true name in the jouissance of the other. There is a Greek word, the phavlos, whose sounding reminds of the phallus. The kakon is related to few, to have few, as I said. This is an evil centralized around the phallus. Let me check for something else. That's it for today. I think I mentioned quite a few aphorisms. I will not give you more context from what I gave. We can have a small conversation if you want, or just go home. Penny, comment, Angelos?
Thank you, Petros. That was very good. Lots and lots of structural points for reference. I mean, there's lots and lots of things there, but just a couple of things. I really appreciated your localizing the master signifier in that scene. I think that will be very orientating. So the identification with the drowning and the fact that you localize it, then there's a point of reference, because I think this is precisely where people get lost because they don't know where to begin.
Yes.
So in any given scene, how does one recognize the properties of a master signifier? And I think with pinning down that example, you've given a valuable static point of reference by which it can then be read and considered and whatever. So that's a very, I mean, if people take nothing else from this, I'm sure there's many things to take, of course there are, but that is fundamental. Even if they disagree,
yeah,
it's something, it's a point of stillness. So what Einstein refers to as an inertial frame of reference. And that's really when you can construct a geometry and you can begin to really evaluate with some rigor to give a structure to what we do. We have to establish a point of consistency. So to pin your word on that place in that way, I think it's a very precious gift that you've given there.
You can get many things from that scene. You can get also the father who does not see, and how the subject was identified in this girl, which was identified with the signified drowning. How this other signifier there, the father who cannot see, which was another identification, how they create the straight lines as well. It was a triangle there.
And I think this is on a slightly different point. When you were speaking earlier about sexualization, I think the word that I would recognize in English as giving the real texture of what you were talking about is the eroticization.
Yes, better word.
Okay, it's it's a much more intimate, vibrant word. Yeah.
Yes,
So I just wanted to
very nice.
mention that. Yeah, and I mean, I won't particularly take it up now, but I think the question of the Gagon is central. Is central to many things, and my understanding of why desire doesn't go to the Gagon is because if there is a Gagon, it's precisely because the subject is disoriented in relation to their desire.
Yes.
And who is it Kant who says not to use the other as a means to an end?
I think
something like that. Yeah.
Maybe Lenin or Louise. But yeah. I think it's Kant.
I think it's Kant. So the thing is that when we aim for a Gagon, it's a means to an end. There's a desire hidden behind that. So we proceed to a jouissance, because if we want to kill somebody, for example, it's because we have a fantasy in our minds that if we kill them, we're going to get to where we really want to be. But of course we don't. So the thing is that the Gagon is always obscuring desire. And it's because the subject is disoriented in relation to their desire that they make this attack. And also you touched on the matter of play. And it made me think, well, what is it that disturbs the fabric of the child's world that then, makes it impossible to play? It's because something has been shattered, and that is the trust and the faith and the sense of assurance in the benevolence of the other. Somehow, another who is supposed to be benevolent presents as Gagon. And I think that's the fundamental disorientation there.
I think the playing appears along with the fantasy. It constructed along with the fantasy, and you can play in a sense to cure the traumatics, because you create a scenario. When later, I think we had a conversation with Angela about, you extract playing from the Borromean note, from the fantasy, and it goes into the act. Then is where you've got the actual playing, the actual breath, the actual enjoyment. But in the beginning, you cannot. It's not a playing separate from the fantasy. It cannot be playing from fantasy. That's my opinion. But it's a good companion of the fantasy. So to hear the dramatic, it's.
You describe it the way you describe the eroticization, that making the traumatic and joyful. Is this what you say about playing?
Yes.
Could you repeat the quote that you said about playing? Right, the concept of death is foreclosed. Something I don't understand there.
Yeah, there is that dimension too. Wait, let me find.
Could you say a little bit more about this? Repeat it and say a little bit more on this quote.
Yeah, let me find it. Sorry.
It's one of the last ones.
Really?
It was something like plates foreclosed when death, and I wanted to write it down, but I didn't manage.
Yes, there's a concept is denied.
Sorry. Yeah, the concept of playing is foreclosed when the concept of death is denied. The concept of death is denied because there is this necessary evil to enter into a metaphor, into a fantasy, to have a body. Okay, and immediately the fantasy, even though if consciously we're afraid of death, but I'm talking about the conscious. In the fantasy, there is no death. There is a picture of immortality. We are immortal in the fantasy. Okay, so when death is denied, you've got the Gagon because the binaries appear. Playing is foreclosed. The playing is foreclosed when the concept of death is denied. the ideal brings in immortality, and thus playing is lost. Okay, but in a sense, it's not lost. It's trapped there. That's what I mean by it. It's trapped. It's trapped from its true dimension to be on the side of the breath, of the no-body, of the act.
Can you give an example, Pedro, of where the concept of death is denied?
The best example I can give is that when you construct the fantasy, the way fantasies are conscious, the fundamental fantasies construct, is a conscious. It's internal. It's infinite. It's immortal. Okay, and if you are experiencing immortality, you are on the side of not only paranoia abstraction, but a paranoia picture, and you cannot die and resurrect, in a sense.
Okay.
You cannot have resurrection. You cannot have access to the act. Okay.
Okay.
It's static. There's no movement.
That also forecloses creation.
Yes.
And it forecloses the possibilities of subjective division, because subjective division is a creative function which relieves the subject from being crucified to the signifier, nailed to it.
But the most important construction that it forecloses is it's the foreclosure. It's a construction of the known body, which is a bit oxymoron, to construct a known body.
Yeah.
Angelos,
Yeah.
did I gave you something to?
Yes, it's like a 4-da without the 4. It's a 4 for the da to become a game, a play.
It's a 4. Yeah, very nice way to say it. It's a play without an object, in a sense.
Yeah, I think you've also opened up some other dimensions there, but they'll come in another.
Next, I will say more next seminar, next month.
Yeah, because there's a zone, in a way, without allowing the death of the trauma. Let's say one can't proceed to create something new. Yes, and it's being able to live that interval where that's no body, whereas there's a suspension of both symbolic and imaginary representations of the real.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Anybody else? Angele? Something else? Somebody from the... I cannot see who is there, but... Okay, well, if there are no questions... by the way, do you see my screen flickering now towards the end? A couple of times?
No, it's fine.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, if there are no questions, we can... Yeah, some more. Okay, guys, see you next month. There will be another seminar in this series, and very nice to be part of this group tonight. Enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Petra.
Thank you.
It was
Bye,
great.
guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.